So essentially what we will be doing today is looking at how do we create the perfect MPA portal. And of course, this session is divided into two, like all of our sessions at this conference. So we have an online session, which is where we are. And then there's a physical session that takes place at the same time in a different room. And we will eventually merge the input from these two sessions to get an overall picture of what the optimal MPA portal would look like. And we will be doing this by going through the Miro board step by step. So first, if you could provide a very quick introduction, where at the furthest left on the Miro board, you can see that there are some yellow digital post-its. So if you can write your name and your role there, just so that we can later kind of track back and see who has thought what is important. And of course, if you can't find it, or if you don't know how to work a Miro, I'm happy to help, so just let me know. But essentially, just click the post-it and then you can add text. We will add more features as we move through the board. Debbie, do you get it to work?
Yes, I think I've just, on a yellow post-it, put my name and job title. Is that what you were?
Okay, I cannot see that, but let's see.
Oh.
If I will refresh. There's also sometimes there's a lag, so as long as yes, it works for you, then we hope it will turn up. Okay, then we will be moving on to looking at how familiar you are with the current HELCOM MPA database, just to get an idea of have you used this before, and if you have, what are your thoughts? So for the next question, which is one step to the right, there is a question on have you or have you not used the MPA database? And I think, I see now. Yes, you have a post-it, but it was in the wrong pile, but that's fine. I'll move it. So we're asking you to take one of the little voting stickers, so essentially the circles that we have there, and then add that to either the yes or the no column. And then there's some clarifying questions that are below. So if you have used it, what would make it more user-friendly for you or more aligned with your user needs? And if you have not used it, why have you not used it? And again, you can use the little post-its to provide your input and put it in the right board. And here again, you can add more than one post-it if you feel like there are more than one reason or more than one way in which it would make it more user-friendly for you. Okay, thank you. And that gives us a little bit of input on how familiar you are with the current version of the database. But of course, we're looking at making an actual MPA portal rather than just upgrading the current database. So for the next question, we're trying to look at who do we think would actually use such a portal? Like if we extend the functionality of the current database and also make it more user-friendly, who do we think would actually be utilizing this as a tool? So if we move one step again to the right, you can see the question, what different user groups do you think might use the MPA portal? And here we're looking at getting as many and as broad a user group kind of mapping as possible. So anyone that you come up with, if there's duplication, that's not a problem. Please put those on post-its, and we'll see if we can find some commonality also between what we're adding to the board to see if we could form some larger groups out of this. So here, please pick a post-it and provide who you think would be using this or could be using this new MPA portal. And again, I'll give you a few minutes to think this through and add as many notes as you feel you can come up with. Okay, we'll do approximately 1 more minute and then start looking at what we have on the board and if there's anything that we feel is missing or that immediately jumps out as this would be a particularly important user. So if you have some last ideas, please feel free to add them to the post-its. Okay, so if we look at what we have on the board here, there's a few things that I think turn up like several times. I think wind power companies and renewable energy sector are very similar. We have schools and unis and the educational sector. National authorities implementing MPA management and the actual MPA managers, which I think are also quite closely linked. Then there's a general note that says that the portal should have like a user-friendly interface and rich information so that different user groups could use it. Also kind of regular users, which I assume to believe that means kind of civil society or the public. We have also one that says children at schools. That's also very close to kind of education. And we have interested members of civil society, local communities. They could be similar, if not exactly the same. Tourists, web search engines should be able to use it. Recreational fishers, boaters, national ministries, the shipping sector, and Helcom, because I assume that it would also be a tool that we would use ourselves. Now, my question to you would be, out of these, which one do you think you belong to? And if you think you don't belong to any of the ones that are here, what would you add to be the user group that you represent? Yes, I see other RSCs, which is Debbie, since Andrei is closely associated with Helcom. So in that sense, I think we are all kind of in the policy sector here in this version of the workshop. So if we would represent several different sectors, I would suggest that we kind of pick a color that we would use throughout the workshop. But I think since we are actually all policy representatives, we might pull through in this version of the workshop now without having to do multiple colors. And then I would move on to look at the next question, which is, in your opinion, what would the MPA portal be used for? So now we have the user groups, but how would these different user groups actually use it? As in, what information would they be or do you think they would like to access, and how would they use that information? And now you can find sticky notes on the side of your screen. There should be a bar where you have the options like to choose sticky notes. And from there you can take as many sticky notes as you want. And here again, we're asking to get as many ideas as you can possibly give. It doesn't matter if we say the same thing many times. And there's really no limits to this. We're at the stage where we're really kind of conceptualizing the MPA portal. So we're happy to take on any kind of ideas, no matter how outside of the box they happen to be. And we'll take a few minutes again to add our input. Okay, we'll do another 30 seconds or so, and then I would like us to actually look at these and maybe discuss them a little bit as well. And I think I would ask Debbie if you have any information from the OSPAR portal on who are the users and what have they actually done in the portal? Like, do you collect that type of information?
I don't think that we do. So we're in we're a little bit removed from our MPA portal. So it's hosted by France, one of our contracting parties, and it's built on an existing database that they had already. And then it's co-managed by Germany and France. So we're a little bit outside of the sort of management of the data portal itself, which is it can be challenging at times because it's difficult for us to download a complete data set, for example. We've been struggling with that recently, and the sort of data infrastructure that it's built on is quite old. I think it's about 10 years old now, the portal. So we need to do some work ourselves, and that's one of the reasons I'm really interested to follow what's happening with your work under the Protect Baltic project, because to understand what you're doing and to kind of, I guess, where possible, keep our approaches aligned so that we've got something that's comparable, or that we have maybe end up with two databases and portals that can interact with each other in some way in a few years' time. I'm not sure whether France collects any information about the use of the data. The ones that I know of are our contracting parties, so both the management sort of agencies and the ministries, when they want to be able to, calculate how many MPAs they have. On the management side, when they're looking at things like connectivity and when they're monitoring some of the sites, or indeed trying to work out a monitoring plan. So not all sites are monitored all the time, and often they're monitored on a risk basis. So they use the information in the portal to look at where they might want to monitor, how the sites are connected. So there's government ministries, agencies. I'm not sure we have a huge number of stakeholders interacting with it, because I think my impression is that they tend to look at the world database on protected areas, which our data is fed into. So I feel like that's more of an entry point for some of our stakeholders than the OSPAR database itself. And then I think academia as well, and project partners. look at the MPA database a little bit too. So I've spoken to people in academic institutions who are running large, EU-funded projects who try and extract data from the database too.
Do you know if the database does these, like, for example, you said like calculations on spatial coverage and stuff? Does the database like do that by itself, or do you extract the information and then you have to like sum it up on by yourself somewhere?
Yeah, it's making me wish that our data guy was here instead of me today, because he knows a lot more about it. I don't honestly know how. So we have annual reporting on the MPAs, and that includes a calculation of the area covered, but I don't know whether users can do that for themselves or whether you have to have kind of back end. I suspect you have to have, like administration rights to the database. We have been struggling to download a copy of the database for the Secretariat recently, so I suspect it would be difficult as a user to make those calculations.
Okay.
I'll check.
And can just quickly on the global database as well, just when you say that the data is reported to the global database, is that done automatically, like through some kind of API, or is it something that somebody like manually does every year, that whatever is new in the database, they go in and like add it to the global database?
I think it's quite manual at the moment. So we've been in touch with WCMC about this recently, and they took what was in the database and did some manual, semi-automated, I think, comparisons, and found some discrepancies that we're working on at the moment. So I don't think it's automatically pushed to the WCMC, but I guess I will also check that as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to like put you in the spot here all the time, but since Andre and I work together, I don't have to ask the same questions from him. So I'm taking this opportunity to kind of pick your brain, since we have a very small workshop at our end compared to the physical one. So there was one more thing I want to say. Yeah. Do you have any idea, like, is something you talk about in the meetings, for example, like how up to date are the countries keeping the database? Like, do you have like a cycle, for example, like every 3 years they have to do it, or do they just do it whenever they have new information?
So we have an annual cycle of reporting into the database from contracting parties, and we have a whole series of components to that reporting that their contracting parties report on annually. One of those is new nominations to the OSPAR MPA network, but we also collect information on management, information on whether there have been any modifications to the boundaries of the MPA or the features that it's protected for. So we do that on an annual basis. It's kind of based around the committee cycles that we have in OSPAR. So we have an annual data call. It normally goes out in sort of May time, closes in October, and contracting parties are asked to report on all of those things. Recently, we've had a little bit of trouble with actually getting some of the information into the database. I think it's beginning to really show its age, our MPA database, and the process of getting a new nomination into the database is a kind of two-step process that first involves Germany as a contracting party doing some quality assurance and maybe checking the geo-referencing, that they've got the right coordinate system and things, and then it goes to France to actually put it into the database. And that database sits slightly outside of the French government, so they then have to kind of ask the database hosts to put the information in. So it's not a very smooth process at the moment.
When you're planning to update now, are you planning to keep the same system? As in, like, is this the hosting and stuff that you're still planning to maintain, or are you looking at like revamping the whole thing?
We're looking at a revamp for sure. We're beginning those conversations now. So for this year, we're continuing as we have been with the same system. But by our November meeting of the group that covers MPAs. We want to have a proposal or a set of options for them. So France, Germany, and the Secretariat are working together to develop those options for how we might rebuild, or I think we're probably looking at some sort of rebuild, and then how the data flows around that would work as well. We've been using this year for the first time. We've been using a SharePoint site for contracting parties to report their data into OSPAR, and then from there it goes to Germany and France to go into the database, and that seems to be working reasonably well. The other thing that we'll be looking at, we have at the moment, the annual data call has some voluntary components and some compulsory components of reporting. So we're also looking at, and some of the management information is voluntary, and we don't always get a great deal of information back. So we'll also, as part of that kind of review of the database, be looking at data flows and looking at what's mandatory versus what's compulsory reporting. We're trialing a new kind of type of management indicator this year as well for the OSPAR scale. It's something that one of our contracting parties has developed, and now we're going to trial it with the information we receive through our annual data call for the whole region. So we're kind of looking at everything from the what is it that we're gathering from contracting parties, how are we gathering it, how are we using it and presenting it, and where does it kind of sit in terms of a database / data portal.
But all of the management information is currently going into the database, so it's all stored in the same place, right?
Yeah, okay. It's not displayed quite as nicely as it is in the. I mean, I think between us, I mean, we look at the Helcom data portal, and we already feel like has more functionality than we have in the OSPAR one. So being able to see kind of management information more easily on the Helcom one is something that we kind of aspire to at the moment from the OSPAR perspective. So and I've just been messaging our data guy. So he said because we don't have a login, we don't get for the database, we don't get great statistics, and we have a bit of Google Analytics is all we have on the users of the database. The other thing I was going to check with him on is whether the information to WCMC is automatically kind of pushed, or whether it's an entirely manual process. That's what I was going to check, wasn't it?
Andrzej, the plan is that ours would be somehow built on Python, right? Do you know
that? The portal, or what do you mean? What?
Yeah, both the new MPA database and the portal that goes with it.
Probably different technologies will be used.
Okay.
We haven't discussed this in detail yet, so Python will be used probably for some data validation and processing tools. But database, I think it will be the PostGIS database, and then we'll see. Depends on the developers who will work there. I don't know yet.
I think it's just like thinking that we use something that uses similar formats or whatever, so that it doesn't become entirely incompatible with whatever OSPAR is also building, and that it also then hopefully ends up being compatible with the world database, so that we could also automate some of the reporting, make it a little bit easier. One last question before we move on to the next step in Miro from my side would be, because as I understand, the world database doesn't actually take in any information on management. I think they do ask like if it's managed or not, but that's it. So have you been looking at all at this, like making the management information compatible with the MPA guide that they're pushing now to link with the global database, where they would have the actual like MPA management information for the various like MPAs that are reported to the global database? Have you had a chance to look at that?
No, I don't think so. It's not something that I've been involved in conversations about, but I think it sounds like we should be. So I will follow up on that. I think I've just checked with Chris in the secretariat, who is often the kind of first point of contact for WCMC and also for all the data, OSPAR MPA data, and he's just a step back. He's just said that his understanding is that the transfer of information to the World Database of Protected Areas is manual at the moment. So that's something that we'll also need to consider. And then in terms of the guidance on management information, no, we haven't yet looked at it. I think there's a in conversations at the end of last year with our Marine Protected Area kind of group, I think they felt that we actually needed to get better management information first. And so our primary focus should be on making it as easy as possible and encouraging contracting parties to provide the management information that's voluntary at the moment. And actually, even where it's mandatory, we don't always get information returned. So our contracting parties are like, let's get the basics first, and then let's think about the kind of the value add and how it relates to everything, to the world database and all the other things that we might want to do with it. The other thing that just while we're on WCMC and their plans, I think they're also planning a world database on OECMs, which is separate to the World Database on Protected Areas. So that's something else that's kind of on my mind to better understand, is how that will work and what the sort of data format in that. And I think they are being more prescriptive with the data formats for the OECM one as well. So that's something else I think it's important for both HELCOM and OSPAR to take into account when thinking about our own MPA data management.
I think there's a question that targets this a little bit later on the Miro board, where we're going to look at like what type of data should be in there, and what should we communicate outwards. For example, like where should we look at the portal, like having this kind of service function that it would provide information to other databases or portals, and then I think these three are really important, like the World Database on protected areas, the OECM database, if the MPA guide will in fact turn into an actual database as well, and then if there's some way that we could or need to link up with OSPAR as well, that like share information on the share. We have a few shared MPAs, for example. But then I would ask you to take one step to the right again on the Miro board, and I would we'll look at the positives and negatives of having a regional MPA portal, and we'll do them one at a time. So we'll start by trying to think of what are the positives of having a regional MPA portal. So we'll look at that for 2 minutes, and then we'll move over and start to think about, are there any negative aspects that we would need to consider, and try to kind of do our best to either avoid or minimize when we build the new portal. But we'll start with the positives. So what are the positives of having a regional MPA portal? Okay, I think we're done. I don't see any more writing going on. So I think on the positive side, there's a lot of the kind of transboundary benefits, and looking at the MPA on like a network level. and supporting kind of cooperation between MPAs, either across borders or even if they're just neighboring but within the same country, because it allows for accessing information all in one place. And then for the negatives, I think a lot of it is like the data reporting related. So data formats, adding more reporting requirements, data harmonization, making sure that people actually report the data. If it takes them extra effort to for example, change from a national format to whatever the portal would be using, then that might be like a disincentive to actually do the reporting. And then also that you lose some of the specificity, I think, because we have to harmonize and lift all of the information to much higher level. Then you can use some of you can lose some of this input. For example, that some measures are effective for some threats, but only in a certain context, and that isn't properly kind of communicated, or you can't get that out of the database. So it has to be kind of taken as with a pinch of salt. Okay. Do you feel that there are any negatives or positives that are missing, or that you think are especially kind of vital to consider when we do the development and the planning?
I can't think of any others. I mean, this one more step of reporting feels like quite an important thing to be conscious of, because it can be quite, I guess, confusing to the data generators, i.e. the contracting parties, and they're all, certainly on the OSPAR side, they all seem to be very sort of under pressure and time poor. So the easier it can be made for them, and the better. And then we've been looking as well at like the onward data flow. So if it kind of helps them in a way by sitting in the middle of something that they already need to do, like report to the world database, without adding too much extra pre-processing, then that's a kind of good thing for them. But if they have to, be changing their data, the way that they're, the format in which they're entering it, the order in which they're entering it, or doing very manual processes, then they might not be quite so keen. And it is that there's a cost associated with it. I think that's one of the other potential negatives, is that not only in having, from your side, in generating, like creating a portal, but also a cost to the countries reporting data if they have to be spending time in reformatting it. So minimizing that is helpful, I think.
Okay, that's a good point. I bolded that one now, so that when we discuss this with Kimmo later, he's running the physical workshop, that we kind of emphasize that this is one of the ones that we have to take extra care with. Then
yeah, I could add here, but in this kind of databases where we gather information data from different organizations, it's always an issue to harmonize it. And if we want to make a clear database, clear portal, then we should minimize the amount of information we collect from other organizations, or we can do opposite, versatile, where to collect as much information possible from different countries, but then the portal is not very clear, it's a mess. So we have to take the direction which we go, or it should be simple to use with more minimum, less information but clear, or it should be rich of information, but then it's not that easy to use the portal. But we discussed this with Kimo, and probably he will get information from his workshop about this.
I think that's a good lead-in also to the next one. So one further step to the right again, where we have the most needed tasks that the MPA portal should be able to do, because how complex the MPA portal is dependent on what is it that we want it to actually be able to do in the end. And on this one, you can see in the board that it's already been partially populated. And this is input to this same question that we've gotten directly from the MPA managers. So as a user group, what kind of information would the managers like to see in the MPA portal in order to make it useful for them? I mean, there's a lot of input here, and I'll also give you some time to like read and check it. But there's some like more rough grouping, if you will. So one of the tasks or functions that the MPA managers would like it to have is to function as a hub for the managers themselves. So where they could find contact information for other managers in other areas or other countries, where they would have a chance to also potentially post questions to other managers and try to find solutions together or learn from others if they have face similar problems. Then there are several notes that they would like it to show pressure information. So essentially what pressures and activities are like at least modeled to be present in a given area, so that they could go beyond what they have in their management plans or in the original designation for an area, and look at what is the current situation actually like, and then plan management accordingly. There are also several requests for having search functions, so that if the database does become quite complex because it has so much information, that it would be possible to kind of search through the information and look for example, a certain type of measure, and you would be able to extract the information for that, or it would point you to the MPAs that have measures that measure or measures that target the same activity. Then this kind of basic stats information. So essentially, what are the percentages? Where are the MPAs? How many MPAs have management plans and things like this. And here there's also been notes saying that automated reporting to and from databases that are linked to MPAs would be really useful to limit the amount of time that the managers have to spend on putting all of this information in there. Also, that it would present information that is important for management, things like the conservation objectives, but also what restrictions are in place, what control methods are being used, information on species and habitats to see where there might be MPAs that target or at least cover the same species or habitats as the one that they are particularly working with, to narrow down the field of where is cooperation going to pay off the best. And also, level of implementation. This is linked to management again, that not just what measures are in the management plan, but how many of these measures are actually being implemented and to what degree, so that there's a way of kind of reaching out to fellow managers and look at, okay, you have clearly been implementing this measure. Does it work or not? Is it something that we should embark on? So there you have some, a quick overview of the different kind of types of tasks that the managers themselves have said that they would like the portal to be able to do. But of course, the managers are, as we could see, only one of the user groups. So when you think about what are the most important or most needed tasks that the MPA portal should be able to do, what tasks are those for you? it doesn't matter if it's the same tasks or similar tasks to what the managers have already said. It's important to also understand how, if there's overlap between how the user groups would be using the MPA portal. And now I would ask you to not use white post-its, but use, for example, the light yellow post-its, so that we can separate the ones that were from the managers with the ones that that we now put on the board. So again, please take a few minutes and add all of your ideas on what tasks the portal or a portal like this should be able to do in order to make it user-friendly and accessible for you and help you in your work. Okay, I don't see any more writing going on. When I was quickly scanning at the same time, I think that there are at least 2 notifications on that it should be able to kind of summarize the basic facts and figures that are related to the MPA network. And in a visually intuitive way, so that it would be easy to find information. For example, what is the current spatial coverage, or what is the current level of of connectivity, and so on. And then like interactive mapping that allows you to drill from like area to feature to management measure to effectiveness and so on, so that there would be like a flow related to the information for like a given area, for example, or a given part of the network. Then like visualizations for both where we have the areas, but also what pressures are present, to what degree, and what biodiversity and so on. I think there's more than one note on that now as well. And this, I think, is, for me, a really interesting one, because this is one that I have not thought about before, but this would be great. And it's like visualization of change over time, because this is something that we're actually really lacking with the HELCOM MPA network at the moment, is that we don't have a way to trace back and, for example, show a graph of when we have what MPA designated as a HELCOM MPA. So we can tell like as snapshots, we had this many in this year and we had this many in that year, but we can't actually make a graph out of it because we don't know when they were nominated. So this could be really interesting and also very useful as a management communication tool, to show that we can see change, or we can see improvement in management or the spatial coverage. Yeah, and then what we just talked about, provide web services that we can use for other portals. And then we could use like a simpler version of it that we could present, so that it would be available also on smartphones, which would make it more accessible, for example, when you're in the field or out and about, because the real database and the portal will probably be quite heavy. Then information on under what instrument different areas have been designated, so that you could, for example, get your Natura 2000 areas, or you could sort by Ramsar and so on, and get kind of stats for the different types of areas, even though at least in the Baltic, many of the areas have more than one status. So they could, for example, be like a Ramsar area and a HELCOM MPA. They could be a Natura 2000 and a HELCOM MPA, which most of them are. But that this would be something that you can sort through without having to take down the whole database essentially, and then do it manually. So those are some of the kind of things that I spotted just by quickly checking. Does this raise any kind of aha moments for you, where you're also like, oh, we should also have this, or it should also be able to do that, that we should still add? Or do you think that this is a pretty good
I
representation.
just, if I can, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just thought the idea of having time, the time dimension is very interesting. If there are, if we have the same data sets, let's say for the previous years, then we can do some kind of prediction for the future, what direction the information is moving. So it can be kind of a forecast a little bit for the future. Maybe this could be also, at least I never saw in the other portal something like this, but why not to think about this in this portal? Just an idea.
Yeah, that actually for me brings to mind that it would be really useful if the portal could run the basic assessments. For example, like the management effectiveness assessment essentially utilizes the information that is already in the portal. So it would just kind of look at has this information been filled in or not, and to what degree, and then it would tell you like what is the status of management effectiveness. And we're also looking at setting up protection specific indicators, which we don't have at the moment in the Baltic Sea. And it would also be very useful if the portal could be used to kind of track those indicators, so that you don't have to separately like do indicator evaluations, but it's something that you can kind of take out of the portal and be like, okay, we are this far from target, or we have this trend, so that would also minimize the like workload for the future.
And that made me think as well about so we've got the kind of time dimension, but the space dimension of things. So marine protected areas are quite sort of the mapping is often quite 2D, but there are management measures in place that apply to the water column or the seabed, and I don't know if we have a way to kind of visualize that at the moment.
So it's essentially visualize the kind of 3D element of marine protection.
Yeah, and this, and this is, sorry.
Yeah. No, go. Yes.
There's a bit. Sorry, I think there's a bit of a lag. So I was speaking over you. This is a conversation we've been having kind of in the context of OECMs and how we integrate information about. So we've been working a bit with NEAF, the Northeast Atlantic Fisheries Commission, on their plans to nominate some of their fisheries management measures as OECMs under the CBD process, and they just apply to the seabed, or they just apply to the water column, and then so we've been talking a bit about this sort of like 3D nature of the protection, which we don't always capture when we're thinking about the area of the area of the sea surface that's covered by MPAs or covered by measures. So then you end up with a 4D thing, don't you? 3D plus time.
But yeah. I think at this stage, as Kim also told me, I should emphasize that there's no borders. Like, as in we can say whatever we want in here. Whether or not it's actually possible to do is something we will face at a slightly later stage in the planning. So I think this is a really good point, because actually most of the measures are like that. Not just fisheries measures, but measures that you take in an MPA target only one of these different layers. And that's not often considered, and we don't have a way of showing it. For example, you can have excellent protection of the pelagic kind of part of the ecosystem, and then nothing for the seabed. And then the question is, will your MPA actually provide biodiversity benefits if that's the type of protection that you have? So this is something that we could try to consider. Can we incorporate that in the kind of effectiveness part of assessing our MPA network? But I've added these now here as well as post-its on the board so that we have them logged for the future. And we can use them to further the discussion also when we look at how do we go forward from here. So the next one question on the Miro board is, which of the following user interface styles do you think would suit best for an MPA portal? And here it's really important that you don't look at the information that is provided in them, because these are not from MPA portals. These are random portals that show any type of data. But essentially, like, which ones do you like the look and feel of? Which ones would you like to access if you kind of landed on this page? You would be like, this, I will understand how to use this. And you can see that there are quite a lot of different options here. And you get to choose 2 of these. So I would ask you to use the voting buttons, which I will first color, so please don't take them quite yet. And then we can use those and just drop them on the, or can I not color them? We will just drop them on the picture of the interface that you think is best suited. There we go. Now I can color them. There we go. So you see now yellow voting buttons up next to the heading for this question. And there are a lot of options, so I will give you maybe 5 minutes to look them over and zoom in and kind of get a feel for it. And then you get to place 2 buttons. They can be both on the same one if there's one that you think is far superior to all the other ones, but you can also spread them out.
There are only 2 buttons to put on. So can I put 2 on one, or 1 on one and another on another, or?
Yeah, you can choose either 2 on one if you think that one is much better than all the other ones, or you can spread them out and do 1 on one and 1 on another. But you can only use 2 votes. I'll give you some more time.
Anyways, I think I will talk with Kimo about this, so I will not put any other. I will have my number 1, and then the rest I can decide. So.
Okay.
Okay.
But it seems like we have one that has 2 votes at least. So that's like the overall current favorite.
I put my second one to the same as the first.
So now there are 2. Okay, but this is really useful information. Then we at least kind of have a basis to start discussing what the user interface could look like. Then I would just ask, like, do you have any other ideas, anything that you feel are not captured in these pictures, but that you think is really important to think about the user interface that we should kind of give as feedback for the further deliberations?
Many of these interfaces do have graphs, and that's very, very good. And only one has the map as the main part of the window. I would like to have something combined where the map viewer is important, because we are doing we are mostly presenting the spatial information, as I understand it, but the graphs should be there as well, and they should somehow be as the statistics which will appear in the interface, but not as the main, because many of them display many graphs as the main view of the portal. I would have the graphs, but as the additional information. And then, of course, textual information and everything, database table information, everything should be in the portal, I think. So basically combination of everything, but still map for me would be the main view. Yeah, that's my comment.
Yeah, I agree with the importance of a map for me. I want to see like spatially where things are. So I only chose ones that had maps as a component of it. And I also agree that some combination of the map and the information is helpful. So I didn't choose that MPA database that's just a map because I felt like I wanted more information at the beginning about what type of, like, I don't just want to know that there's something at that green blob. I kind of want to know a little bit about what's there and what my kind of menu of options are. And I also quite like having some sort of, so the G4A flooded one has some menu bar, so you can kind of understand the structure of what you're looking at a little bit from the outset, and I quite like that as well. So you get an early view of sort of everything that's in there and that you have to choose from. Yeah, so I liked I'm like visually attracted to the map, and I'm also visually attracted to the blue one to the right of it. I think that's a good, like, it's simple, but it tells you something about what kind of information is there. Some combination of those with the menu for me would work well. But
I'll add that.
did you find any examples of where there was a kind of slightly different interface intended for different users?
I don't know. That's something I would need to ask Kimmo. He's the one who's like been looking through these.
Yeah, okay. Because I feel like some of the different users of the potential users of the portal might want a different amount of information, like a school or a university kind of using it to help give an overview of the types of protection and where they are, would want something a bit different to people who are looking at management of, or managing the MPAs. So
but could it be achieved by kind of providing these broader summaries on the landing page, and then there you can kind of dig deeper to where you want to go, so that it's not necessarily that you would enter and it would look different depending on who you are as you enter, but rather that you always start at the high level and then get more detailed as you kind of click through it.
Yeah. Or you could have menus that pop up at, you hover on a map over a particular site, and then you have something that sort of opens up that shows you that you have management information about that site. You have some trends over time for that site. You have some information about the features for which that site was designated, so something that kind of allows you to begin to dig down from a visual starting point. It's exciting, isn't it? All the possibilities.
Especially at this stage when we don't think about how doable they are yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We have
No
to
constraints.
start big. So.
If there will be a need for the version for smartphones, we should probably not have the geoprocessing analysis on that version, because it's just not convenient to use. Then those users who will perform the analysis, they would perform it on the PC, not on the smartphone. So if there will be a version for smartphone, then not this big geoprocessing probably there. Maybe more map viewer is fine, of course, and then basic map functionalities like identification of the features, and then maybe more tabular or text information on that smartphone version.
Yes, and put that as a note as well. Okay, then we would move on to the next, which is a questionnaire. So here there's a number of questions, and then there are kind of these sliding scales or bars, if you will, that range from not important, insignificant to important, or yes and no. So we'll go through these really quickly, grab a post-it and write your answer, and then place it on the sliding scale on whether you think this is important or not. So you provide an answer to the question, but you also get to kind of prioritize it at the same time by saying, is this something that we should definitely do, or is it something that is nice to have, or is it something that, okay, fine, could be done, but really it's like an extra. So the first question here is, what features, functions, or tasks are missing from the current MPA database? And here you can then grab a post-it and put it on the scale where you think it is. And if you aren't so familiar with the database, then of course you can also skip this question. Okay, I see no more post-its for this question. Oh, Andre, maybe you can drop it there while we move on to the next one. The next one is, should there be query functionality for the end user in the new MPA portal? So should the end user be able to query, or is this something that we should kind of maintain? For example, at the Secretariat, people would have to write us to ask us to query and then send them information. And this is yes or no options only.
Just put mine right in the middle unintentionally. When you say query, do you mean sort of obtain their own information about some of the sites?
Yes, I think Andre probably answer this one better than I can, but that's what I
understand. This is query data information, or the question is not very clear to query what, but I assume it's data. So I answer that yes, it should be done by the users in the portal, not to send the query request or something like this.
It's essentially, I think, Debbie, when we were talking about the OSPAR one earlier, and you said that you have to kind of ask them to query the database and then get an extraction, that this would then be that you wouldn't have to do that you could query the database directly and get the extraction.
Yeah.
And since we all answered kind of yes, I think, to the previous question, the next question is, what would be the foremost needed query or queries? So what is it that you would actually ask from the portal or like want to extract from the database? And do you think that this is important, medium, or not important? Okay, I think I don't see any more cursors flying around, so we'll move on to the next one. And this is a little bit similar to, I think, what we got from the tasks already, but you can either put similar information if you feel that it's relevant here as well, or then if you have other information, then put that. And it's like, what kind of information or data would you like the new MPA portal to offer? So essentially, what should be in the database? And if you already know where such data is stored, please add this information to your notes. So essentially, if you know that this data is stored somewhere else, but the portal could show it, then where is it being stored? Okay. I see there are some new post-its still coming. We'll do another minute. Okay, I think I don't see any more cursors again. So the next question is, into what databases, portals, or websites should the HELCOM MPA portal feed information? So this is very close to what we discussed earlier about linking the OSPAR and HELCOM database and the global database on protected areas and so on. So if you can come up with some, well, these same ones or other ones, then please add. Okay, I don't see any more suggestions here. So the next question is, what kind of communication you see as important within the portal? So for example, should there be the possibility for communication between MPA managers? Should there be a feedback possibility from the user to the hosts of the portal, information channel for the admins, and so on? So whatever ideas you have, please put on the post-its and rate them as according to prioritization.
And Janika, there is one more above question. It doesn't correspond the rows in the table, but maybe we can go next one to that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's when we have added post-its, the table has grown, but the questions have not grown at the same speed. Okay. Well, let's then do the map functionalities first. So the next question is, in fact, what map functionalities should the portal have, or if it should not have map functionalities, why not? So here it comes back to the kind of that we talked about the user interface, that we think the maps are super important, but what map functionalities should there be? Same procedure as every year, put it on a post-it and put it on where you think it should go based on priority.
Janika, I'm not sure I even understand what the options are. As in,
I would imagine that, because I didn't write these questions, but I am imagining that it could be something like, for example, that you could choose a subset of the region and get the information just from that area, or that you could choose, like, I want only the MPAs that are within the borders of Latvia. Or should it always show the whole network no matter what, to kind of push the network angle? Should you be able to layer information on your own? For example, like choose which biodiversity or which species you are showing like the distribution for. Should it be able to do kind of processing of map layers? For example, if you pick a species and you pick a pressure, should it show like where you then get high or low impact, and so on? So I guess these are all kind of map functionalities of varying complexity that you could include.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, I think I see no more writing going on. So we'll move on to the next one, which was the one that we tried before, on what kind of communication you see as important within the portal. And here again, you can add whatever you want, and then rate it based on kind of priority. Okay, I think I don't see any more writing, so we're moving on to the last one here, which is, should the new portal collect information on usage? So for example, track which user has done what. So this is collecting the type of information on who is using the database, and when they're in there, what are they accessing? So trying to get a better grasp of what user groups are actually accessing it and how are they using it.
Sorry, is the question about what kind of information should be collected, or is it important to collect information?
The question is what kind.
What kind? Okay.
Yeah, and
Good.
No, wait. I think I'm wrong. Wait, I have a bar in the front of the. Yes, I'm wrong. Should the new portal collect user information? But I'm sure that in your post-it you can also write what kind of information if you think that you have that information already available. Okay, I think I don't see any more post-its. Oh no, Andre is writing still. We'll wait. No pressure.
Okay, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we are coming up on the very last question for this workshop. We have about 9 minutes left, and a few of those minutes need to go to wrap up. So the last question is for you to kind of provide adjectives that you associate with an excellent MPA portal. And then we'll do a quick voting on which of these you think is the most important. Okay, and then we will do a very quick, I will give you a little bit of time to read through the different adjectives, and then you will be again given the option of having 2 voting stickers that you can use to kind of drop on the post-it or next to the post-it that you think is of the most importance when you think about a excellent MPA portal. Okay, I think we have all of our votes in place. That's great. Then with the last 5 minutes, I'll do some wrap up so that you know what the next steps are and how this will be used. So if you have any further suggestions or ideas or questions, then you can always write Kimmo. And Debbie, when you kind of get going and you have had some scoping as well, I'm sure Kimmo will be mega interested in what has come out of the scoping on the OSPAR side. So feel free to reach out to him. Now we will of course continue the MPA portal development. The portal itself as a whole will be done by the end of the project, but we will kind of work on it already now to make sure that we can populate it and we have somewhere to put all of the data that we are collecting and so on. But all the full functionalities will only be available later. But in order to be able to do this, we need to find volunteers, to especially like end user volunteers who can help and kind of guide the suggestions that the development team actually come up with, so that what we produce is something that people can use and are actually interested in using. So if you are interested in joining, then you can also, again, reach out to Kimmo. And the main tasks here would be like to share expert knowledge. So essentially knowledge about how you would use it and what it would look like. Possibly joining some design meetings. And some ad hoc meetings on like the various components of the development phase, providing like passive essentially feedbacks and comments. So you would be sent a test version of the portal and be able to look around and say, this works, this doesn't work, I think this is in the wrong place, or so on. And the next steps now are that in June, we will prepare the requirement specifications for the MPA portal. And by February 2024, the data model for the MPA database that underlies the portal would then be ready. That's an official deliverable from the project. And by September 2025, we would then start working on the portal, or we would have something for the portal user interface that would need to kind of start going through testing and feedback. So if you are interested in taking part in this, I think Andrzej will probably have no choice because he will be asked to do it anyway. Then let Kimmo know, and he will be happy to kind of take on board. And I think also if you have some similar process in OSPAR for the OSPAR database or the OSPAR portal, then he would probably be interested in being part of that user test group as well. So if that's something that comes up, then also reach out to him to let him know. And that's it for this workshop. We will now, with Kimmo, sit through lunch and pull together 3 kind of key take-home messages that we will merge from the physical and the online workshop. So what you will see on stage will be a combination of these 2. And we will present them then in the plenary in the afternoon. So there you will also get some kind of idea of what has come from our sister workshop that is currently taking place. And then we will take all of this on and use it when we are starting to now do the requirement specifications and so on. So thank you. It was a very small workshop, but I think we were very effective.
Yes, great. Thank you very much.
Very, very valuable input. I think he will actually be quite pleased. So,
Janneke, can I ask, the in-person sister workshop that's been happening in parallel, is it possible to share any of the messages that were coming out of that? Because I'm conscious that we're all quite kind of from one perspective, and I'd be really interested to hear what some of the government agencies or even the sector representatives that were introducing themselves at the start might be saying about this.
Yeah, so there will be like they've done exactly what we have done, except on a wall with actual bits. So there will be a like conference report that comes out, and that one will contain workshop reports for each of the workshops, where Kimmo will transcribe all of their post-its into actual text that we will put in the document. So latest there is an opportunity to get to see all of their input as well. But if you need it earlier, he will also be taking pictures of all of the input. I mean, you will have to suffer through people's
handwriting and
but it's at least available through that as well.
Okay, and I've just been communicating with Chris in the Secretariat. I think we'd really like to be involved, but I think it probably would be him. I think he'd be more useful in this kind of specification development process. So he'd like to be involved, and absolutely we'd like to have you involved the other way as well. We'll sort of begin conversations properly after our biodiversity committee in March on what we do, with a view to getting some sort of specification developed leading up to November. We don't have a kind of budget in the way that you guys do for this, but we do want to work together with our kind of users and also the people who are putting the information in, which aren't always exactly the same. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Between the March and November. So we'll keep you in touch once we've made some plans for how we do that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Oh, we get an announcement saying I have to.
Okay.
So please go enjoy a good lunch, and then come back for your afternoon workshops, and they will start at 2:30.
Great.
Thanks again. And
Thanks, everyone. Bon appetit.
thank you, you too.
Have a good lunch. Bye.
Bye.